Okay, hi everyone. Tahara Ezrahti here from Applied Intuition, and I'm a professional clairvoyant and also a clairvoyant development teacher. And today I'm here with Shannon Jaffe, and Shannon is a friend. She's also one of my former students, and she's a professional artist and an art teacher. And so I wanted to invite her here today to talk about art and how art is essential for healing and how art can actually facilitate healing. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and I wanted to first of all start off by getting a little bit about your background, about what drew you to art to begin with, and also what drew you to being an art teacher.
Well, I've been creating art pretty much my whole life. One of my first memories that I have is sitting down coloring with my mom and just feeling incredibly calm and focused and wanting to color like her. And since then, I've always had, thanks to my family, a lot of opportunities to create. And whether it was singing or dancing or playing and building or creating, I have always had been lucky to have opportunities where I can be creative.
So then how did you start teaching art?
I started teaching art when my children were very young. When they were 1 and 3, they went to preschool, and I had graduated with my degree, my bachelor's in fine arts with the emphasis in painting and drawing. And I became the art teacher at their preschool. And that's where I started. And from there, I went on to get my teaching credential in art, and I've been teaching at Santa Barbara Unified for 20, or it's, well, this is my 26th year of teaching, 16 for Santa Barbara Unified.
So you're working with elementary schools?
I am. I've taught all ages from preschool to undergraduates, but right now I'm working with elementary.
Okay. So I wanted to get your take on how you think art can facilitate healing and the different ways you've seen art benefit your students, whether it's like benefiting them physically or spiritually or mentally or emotionally or even socially. And um, do you we'll get into the slides in a second, but just quickly, do you feel like art helps facilitate kind of the whole child? Is that
I
something you
do.
noticed?
I do. I believe that art is a crucial part in teaching to the whole child. Art, there's so many components that belong to creating, and it is a very healing process, whether it's conscious or unconscious. I see my students heal through art every day, and I feel really grateful to be able to be a facilitator of that process. For me personally, art has always been very healing, and it's been a very natural process for me to heal through art. It hasn't always been something that I think about consciously, but something that it's that I go to. And for my students, I want to instill in them the ability to access all those different modalities, whether it's singing or dancing or drawing, as long as they are creating. I feel like it's an incredibly healing process.
So one of the things we talked about earlier when we were just chatting over the phone was how, in my observation as a clairvoyant healer and a teacher, is how when people are being creative, their spirit is more in their body. They're more grounded, they're more present. And sometimes when someone's had a trauma, doing something creative actually can draw the spirit back in, entice them back in. And so that's how I feel like art is super critical. It's not, like a little optional thing. So you sent me a bunch of slides. I'm going to share my screen and look at the slides. Okay, so this is your artwork, Shannon. You want to just briefly, like, what does art give you?
Um, sure. Yes. So you mentioned art the process of creating, bringing your spirit into your body and being very grounding. And I really love that analogy, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think that's why I do go to painting when I have intense emotional or physical pain. Painting has always been something that has grounded me, even if I wasn't really consciously aware of it. So I love that analogy. It focuses my brain, it calms everything around me, it quiets everything, and it just gives me, it's a very meditative process. It just, I find a sense of peace and calm, and I can think and process as I'm painting, and it's just it's very natural. So I love that analogy of the spirit coming into the body.
We also talked about it actually changes your brainwave state. So when someone's creating and they're doing art, they're in more of an alpha brainwave state, which calms like that monkey mind or that looping or worried, and it just gets you in this zone where you can process. I think that you also are able to access your intuition more, and it helps people get new ideas. It helps them solve problems, gets them out of that fight or flight. So you showed me this. This is the whiteboard in your class, in your elementary school classroom. So tell me, what are we looking at and how do you use this?
Well, I think it can be challenging and overwhelming for students or anybody really to try anything new. And specifically when it comes to art materials, we have students who, maybe have drawn or painted or a little bit or done a little clay, but for the most part, when they're presented with materials like wood or clay or printmaking or paint or glue guns, all these different materials, it can be overwhelming. So I like to start off a class with new materials with just a growth mindset review of how to turn our negative thoughts into positive thoughts. And so we do this collaboratively. We brainstorm any negative thoughts that we might have when trying anything new, really. And the students list these different sayings like I can't do this, this won't work, I did it wrong, this looks horrible, and we turn it into positives. So I can try new things. Maybe this isn't the best, but I'm happy with it. I can make mistakes. And so it's really all about experimenting and making mistakes and trying again until they get something new that they're happy with.
I think this is so cool because it doesn't just apply to art or art materials. It can apply to anything. Learning to ride a bike, asking a girl on a date, driving a car, tackling a difficult subject in school. So you're teaching them a process to manage their resistance or fear or hesitancy.
Yeah, and it always is kind of fun because we notice how quickly our brains go to negativity and then we turn it around. And so we're very intentional about it in the classroom, and it's kind of playful where we laugh, where people just say, "Ah, this looks horrible," and then everyone looks at them and they have to switch it up. So it's kind of fun and lighthearted approach to something that is actually really important.
That's great. Okay, well, so tell us about this and what we're looking at and how it's part of your curriculum.
So the picture on the left, the abstract uh, drawing and painting, is how I start my preschoolers and kindergartners off with new materials, where they introduce them to color pencils, Sharpies, pencils, oil pastels, chalk pastels, and we go through emotions, and they express their emotions through scribbling. So it's a great way to introduce new materials, but also learn that our emotions we can express them using art. And so they make these beautiful abstract pictures, and we focus on scribbling. We only scribble. We don't draw
Mm.
houses or trees or hearts or stars. We just scribble. And so it's a beautiful way to also just be talk through different emotions.
Well, I would imagine everyone's successful too.
They
They're
all
scribbling,
come
right? There's
out
no wrong way to scribble.
right. They all come out beautiful. They really do.
So what's the picture on the other side of the figure?
The picture on the right is a sixth grader doing figure drawing. And so it's a nice comparison of where they start in preschool and kindergarten and where they end up. So we did live figure drawing where the students draw their friends and then they pick their favorite pose and then
Hmm.
choose their own drawing material to finish it off.
Hmm. Great. Okay. And what is this?
This is a project where students were allowed to do whatever they wanted to. I like to let students create their own artworks and listen to their own desires to guide them. And so this was a kindergartner who wanted to draw her home and her car. And I just thought it was a really beautiful, complete piece.
It's kind of a free flow.
Yeah. Self identity, a great way to process who you are, who you're becoming, who you want to be through drawing and painting.
Let me get into. So we have sculpture. We talked about through sculpture some of the physical healing, or like managing physical objects in the real world. Tell us about the skills kids need to apply in order to make these sculptures.
So these sculptures, they're very small, and so it's a great way to practice using fine motor skills. Especially nowadays, we have a lot of time we spend on computers and iPads and not so much holding pencils or drawing materials. So this is a great way to get students to really work with their fingers and put together small shapes in order to make a finished piece. And they also have a lot of choices within this with different glues, glue guns, different paints, different materials. And it's a great way for them to practice using their fingers, small motor skills.
Play. So
So
again, go ahead.
this is we fired our clay in we did it in the park, and we took our clay pots, and instead of putting them in the kiln, we did them on the barbecue in the park. And it's another way to fire clay. And so this is how they fire clay in indigenous communities in Mexico. And it's a great way to fire clay without having to have a kiln.
I would imagine that all the, you know, playing with the clay, actually working the clay, that's also this kind of physical thing that kids don't get a lot of playtime with physical objects, because they're on the computer, they're on their phones or on the iPads so much that everything's about screens, and this is about something tangible.
Clay is a great way for students to get out their emotions. They love clay, and we do a lot of experimenting with clay. When they get their clay, they can make whatever they want. They can roll it, they can punch it, they can squeeze it, they can twist it. The only thing I ask they don't do is throw it. So um, yeah, it's a great way for them to get out their emotions. They love to just pound the clay, and I
Yeah.
also think it's a great way to introduce different cultures too, and how we can do come out with the similar things in different ways, different perspectives.
So tell us about this vision boxes.
The vision boxes is where we learn how to visualize. I mean, we're always visualizing when we're creating art, but this is intentional, where I ask my students to sit and close their eyes and visualize their future, what they want to do, where they want to go. And this can be really challenging for a fifth or sixth grader to think abstractly like that, but they do it, and they are able to create these little boxes with little sculptures or found objects or collages that have meaning to them, and they can put it together to create their own vision for their future. And it's a nice change from the vision board because it's 3D and they have a lot of different materials that they can use in order to make their vision come to life.
You talked to me about also doing some mindfulness exercises with them. Do you do that before this visioning exercise?
We do. We start off all of our classes with deep breathing, and that sort of sets the stage for students to use the part of their brain that's going to help them to create. And in that time, they visualize. They learn how to visualize and how to take their idea and make it into a reality.
So that's definitely a useful life skill. I
It
wish I
is.
had learned that like in elementary school.
Me
Okay, so
too.
Dia de los Muertos, tell us about this.
Well, in November, we celebrate Dia de los Muertos, and the students create an altar. They create everything that is on the altar, all the flowers, the papel picado, the sugar skulls, marigolds, and they bring pictures of their loved ones who have passed on or their pets. And we create this beautiful mural and or excuse me, beautiful display. The murals, there are murals in the back, marigold murals that the younger students make. But it is a very healing and calming way for young people to process death and strong emotions around loss. And it's a beautiful, beautiful way to honor our ancestors and our pets.
And then the parents get to come through and witness this also.
Yeah, we open it up to the community on the weekend, and we have a fall festival, and parents and family members and community members come through the back of the art room patio, and they can place their own photos on the altar and just sit with it. And remember, we have a lot of people that come and visit the altar in the community, and it's a really special time.
That's great. Okay, let's see. Collaborative fiber arts. Tell us what's going on here.
So these are pieces of paper that the students made. They put in their own flowers and their own colors and things into the blender to blend all of the matter together and create these beautiful pieces of paper. And then from there, we used recycled yarn to sew all the pieces together. In fact, the students, they decided that they wanted to do that with the pieces of paper, that it came organically, and you can see that they all sat down and sewed all their pieces together, and it just became this beautiful quilt, basically.
Yeah. So, how do you think this is a collaborative earthwork? So tell us what you notice when kids are collaborating, and you can explain what this is too.
This is a collaborative earthwork where each student found something in nature that they wanted to contribute. We were on a field trip here at a nursery, and so we had access to all kinds of beautiful flowers. There was a beautiful bird there. You can see the bird
Mhm.
feathers, the leaves, the rocks. And yeah, collaborative work is a great way for different, all types of students to use their skills. For example, some students love to be in charge, to be the leader of the group and organize, and some students like to collect things or take drawings and put them together. Some students like to do the actual painting and drawing, and some students like to do the cleaning. So there's so many different skills that the students come with, and then they just are able to choose what they like to do, and we all work together to create something, a beautiful piece of art.
Great. So now we're moving into lots of reds and oranges and kind of intensity here. What was this about?
So this was during the Thomas Fire in 2017, where the Thomas Fire was spreading through Santa Barbara. And we were in school for about a week when the fire was actually burning before air was too thick for school and school was canceled. But during that time, we sort of just put everything aside and dove right into what was happening. I mean, there was really no way we could ignore this huge fire burning, nor would we want to. So the students found images online, and they took those images and they drew and painted them, and it was a really amazing way for us to come together and process what was actually happening, and also to heal.
So that's these fiery images. This is during the fire. And then for people who aren't familiar with Santa Barbara and the Thomas Fire, several weeks after the fire, we had this huge rainstorm and we had a giant mud flow go through Montecito that killed 23 people, destroyed a bunch of houses, closed the 101 freeway for 3 or 4 weeks. And so tell us what's going on here.
So during the mudslides, that was right after the fire. I wasn't able to get to work, so I had the substitute teacher have the students draw images to thank our first responders. So on the right, you see all of the drawings with fire engines and different scenes happening. And from those drawings, when I finally was able to get back to work, I had to take a bus through all the mud for nurses and teachers in order for us to get to work. And then we kept on going with our work. We went straight from the fire paintings into these beautiful fabric quilts, and it was a really intense time. There was a lot of raw emotion. It was scary, and it was also sad. We lost, like you mentioned, 23 members in our community. So we just started creating. We just used the materials that we had in the classroom and the images that were being flashed on the screens everywhere, and we just took all of it and we created these beautiful fabric quilts.
Do you think that, did you notice that it was helping the students? Like, was there anything noticeable?
I think
Um,
just the act of doing something creative was incredibly healing. I
mhm.
mean, we couldn't ignore what was happening, and it was just so important for us to do something meaningful and something authentic that was going to help us at that time. So while we were cutting out images or drawing or gluing or putting them together, we were all working together, but we were also able to talk about what was happening or what we
Mhm.
were seeing. um, and it was really natural for us, right? Because it wasn't forced, it was just happening right there. And it was, when you're creating art, it's a really great way to connect with people. You're creating, you're talking and you're sharing, and it's very natural.
I'm kind of struck in looking at this by the number of helicopters that was the sound was also part of this whole experience for all of us.
Yeah, as we were working, there were so many helicopters flying around, and there was the smoke in the air, and then all of the mud everywhere. So yeah, it was a crazy time, but I have to say that after all of this was said and done and we displayed them, it was really powerful. We had parents come in looking at the artwork. We had people just standing there crying. And I think the students really got a sense of how powerful and meaningful their work was, and how it allowed for everybody to share and to feel and to process and to heal. And so it's so authentic when you have
Yeah.
students, young students creating art. They're not worried about uh what they're creating so much and what people are going to think. They're really creating from the heart and from their experiences, and so it just makes it so meaningful.
Yeah, that was definitely an intense time. It still, is in everyone's memory. So here we have big mural projects. Tell us, I'm also really curious in these bigger collaborative projects, how it helps kids fit in. Maybe there's certain kids that have a disability or kids that just are socially awkward. I'm curious to hear from your perspective if you think working on group projects, helps that, or what you've observed.
I do. I think working collaboratively is so important. Like I had mentioned before, is that we all come to the table with different skills, and working in murals allows for students to use those different skills, and it is important for students to see and feel and experience that we all are different, but we have so many similarities, and we are interdependent. And so what we do does matter, whether it's the person who's washing the brushes or lugging the paint or choosing the colors or uh, cleaning the water or drawing the picture or sanding down the wall. I mean, there's so many different components to mural making, and there's always a space for everyone. And it's not that everyone has to be the artist, and although pretty much everyone does paint or do some part of the actual, the making of the mural, but everyone has a different job, and it's a great way to use everybody's strengths.
So this one looks like it's painted on a fence. Is that correct?
That was on a wall. That was
On a
at
wall.
Franklin School, and it was on a big wall. So
It
we,
looks like there's slats in here.
yeah, those are the boards.
Oh, the boards. Oh, so it was on boards that was then affixed to a wall.
No, it actually was straight onto it was a wood wall.
Oh, wooden wall. Oh, okay. A wooden
So
wall.
we primed it and we painted straight onto the wall.
Okay. And then this
So from that mural, the painted
from
mural
this one.
at Franklin School, then we were asked to do a mosaic mural using the same design at the local McDonald's. So that was a really big project for us. It was a big mural, and we worked with a local artist, Betsy Gallery, in creating this mosaic, and it was a big project. But it was incredible the way the students came together, and we cut all those tiles. We designed the mural, we glued each piece, and each person who created the mural did their own self-portrait. So all of those people that you see are the people who created the mural, and they each did their own mosaic portrait of themselves.
You know what I think is so cool about this too, because it's in a public place that's there permanently. They can, from this point forward, take their friends, their relatives, people by and like, yep, that's the mural that we did in fifth grade or sixth grade or whatever. There's me. It's this public art that's, there for everyone for, I don't know if eternity, but for a long, long time.
Yes.
So this says mural restoration.
Yes, this is a mural that is in front of Monroe Elementary School, and it was going to come down. It was falling apart. It was needing some serious repairs, but it was such a beautiful piece that we decided to restore it instead, which was a whole different aspect of creating a mural. We found the original artist, and she came on board and helped us. And yeah, we kept the same design, and it was really a beautiful project. Instead of ripping it down and starting over, we saved it, and it's bright and beautiful, and we were able to hear the whole history of how the original artist created it.
Wow. Great. Okay, tell us about this mosaic.
This mosaic was dedicated to a young student of ours who tragically died in a accident, and we had just started the mural when little Hasiel passed away. And so we dedicated the mural to him, and we kept him in our thoughts, and we talked about him and our experience and the pain and the loss of losing him while we finish this mural. And then when it was done, we had it installed on the side of the school, and we dedicated it to him with a little plaque of his own mosaic that he had made shortly before he passed. So it was a very, very sad time, but we were able to make meaning out of it, and it still hangs there today.
So this looks like some newspaper clippings of the student and his family passing and
Yeah, this was the library, the Santa Barbara Library, where we had a big installation dedicated to him. Um, and it's always nice for the students to see their work recognized, and it makes them feel really good, and it
Mhm,
just adds to the meaning making of peace.
mhm. Okay, so functional art. Tell us, what does that even mean?
Well, we have so much in our world, everything that we use basically, which is art, but with a function. So whether it's masks or tablecloths or hats or clothes or furniture or cars, so many different things that take artists to design them. This piece right here, we did an installation of everything that was made by students. So everything in this picture is made, whether it's plates or cups or napkin holders, placemats, and it was really just learning and exploring functional art, how art exists in our world, and how everything that we use and we do and we see is basically art.
Yeah, I think that we don't really think about that. We think of art as just something you hang on the wall, but you're right. All your clothing has an artistic element. You're not going to buy dishes that look ugly, right? So they need to look, the color has to be pleasing, the shape has to be pleasing. Just, yeah, you're right. Art is part of everything. So you're in an
And
elementary school, and this says cross-curricular art. So I'm assuming this was maybe kids studying about pollinators and plants.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
Second and third graders taking what they've learned in their science class and just putting it into their artwork. So it's a great way for them to understand what they're learning, what they're reading about, what they're hearing. They can create their art, and it all just comes together.
If I were a kid and I had learned about pollination and flowers, and then I did this type of art, art project, that would really stick in my brain more than if I just learned about it in a textbook.
Right, because we all have different ways that we learn. Some of us are visual learners, some of us are auditory learners, some of us are kinesthetic learners. We need to move. So there's so many different ways students can learn. That's not just reading and writing, and that's um, another reason why art is so important is because it uses different modes of learning. And so it's important for those visual learners or even students who need to move around to gather their materials. And there's a lot of different modes of learning that go into creating a piece of art.
So do you meet with the other teachers to see what the kids are learning at different times to coordinate doing these cross-curricular projects?
Yeah, I do try to do that in the beginning of the school year. I pretty much know what each grade is focused on now that I've been doing this for a while. So I know
Mhm.
fifth grade does solar system. And yeah, I switch it up. Don't always do the same things, but I do try to incorporate what they're learning in the classroom into what we're doing in the art room.
The transportation. Okay, so this looks like a weaving.
Weaving is a great way for students again to practice small motor skills, and they really love weaving. They really get into the flow of the creative state when they're weaving, and it's just a very meditative process, and they come out with just absolutely beautiful works. And more sewing. You can see there's a lot of detail here. So these are second and third graders learning how to sew and really using those small, fine motor skills to thread their needle um, and sew all these little pieces together. They have to cut them and design them and sew them, stuff them. So there's a lot of different components, and they really love being able to just make something on their own. They come in at recess, they come in at lunch, and they want to just sew, and they want to make pillows or purses or whatever they can. The fact that they have the ability to create something that's tangible that they can take home, that they've created on their own, they don't have to buy, or they don't need money, it's really motivating for them.
Hmm. Those are really cool. I'm going to stop the screen share. So have you noticed a difference? You've been teaching for so many years. Have you noticed a difference from when you first started and maybe the school didn't have an art teacher? Did the kids didn't have regular art? Because I I was working at Art from Scrap and Explore Ecology when the art program, the ICANN art program for Santa Barbara schools started. And it's my understanding that most of the elementary schools didn't have a dedicated art teacher prior to that, and that maybe kids got art once a week or something like that with their regular teacher, but it was really different than going to an art specialist with an art room and supplies and all that. So have you noticed a difference in the kids in general now that art has been basically given a place amongst the curriculum, saying that it's important and you're gonna, do it regularly as part of your school, and there's a professional doing it, not just the classroom teacher who, may or may not like art or be interested in it, right? It would really vary depending on who your teacher happened to be any given year.
Yes, absolutely. I think honestly, I started teaching the year that they started the art program back into the schools at Santa Barbara Unified. So
Mhm.
I don't have that experience of what it was like before there was the art there, but I do know that art is essential for our students. Um, there are so many different parts of creating artwork that is not just for creating art, but you can take the skills that they learn and that they can use that in any subject. For example, the growth mindset that we started the slideshow with, just those thoughts of changing your negatives into positives when creating artwork. That's something that, like you said, can be applied to any subject. Just thinking of an idea, gathering your materials. These are called the studio habits of mind. These are habits that artists create, that have habits that artists implement and use, and engaging in their art, persisting in their artwork, understanding,
Yeah.
reflecting, editing, all these different components, and even organizing your space and cleaning up. These are all different parts of making an art piece. So it's not just the actual act of creating, but
Mhm.
it's all the different parts put together that being an artist entails. And so any of these habits that are instilled in little artists' minds are all habits that they can take, whether they're going to be a mathematician or a carpenter or a teacher or whatever. These skill sets are just, they're crucial for our young people to engage in. And like anything, it's a habit. So the more you do it, the better you are at it, and the more confident you feel about it. So it's a very powerful subject. It's
Yeah. It's interesting because I think there's this misconception about, oh, you're born as an artist. You just came out knowing how to do art, and that most of us aren't artists. And then there's a few people who are artists. And I find it interesting because I feel like people think about developing your clairvoyance and the same thing. Oh, you're just born that way. And they don't realize, no, it's a skill that anyone can learn, but it takes practice and dedication. In fact, I use the example of art. It's like learning how to paint, or it's learning how to play an instrument, or learning how to fix a car. So these are teachable skills that most people can learn. But if our culture doesn't have curriculum set up to teach these things, then people just somehow think it's the small percentage of just kind of freakishly naturally talented people that they're they get to do those things and the rest of us have to just sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Tara, because I can't tell you how many adults come into the art room and say, I don't know how to make art. I'm not an artist. And
Hmm.
I always ask them, so what do you do that's creative? Or do you cook? Do you do sports? Do you all these different ways? Do you dance? Do you sing? Do you play music? Do you take pictures? Do you people I think inherently are creative. They're somewhere in their world they are doing something creative. I truly do believe that. I never called myself an artist. I It was just something that was just inherent in the way that I grew up, and I really believe that everyone is an artist, and it's just about having the courage to explore what that means to each individual.
Yeah, I think the courage to move into the unknown because you don't really know what you're going to create until you start doing it. You can have an idea of what you're going to create, but it, it's not there yet. So it's evolving. And I think for a lot of people that's kind of scary because it's the unknown. You're just having to trust your spirit coming through and expressing yourself and seeing where it goes. And I also think the judgment part that people tend to, especially adults. That's why I think it's good for kids to have art because they're less judgmental. But by the time they get to be an adult, they're so judgmental of their own art that really gets in the way. How can you have this creative flow when you're so concerned about doing it right?
Yeah, that's why I always think about the free writes when if you've ever taken a creative writing class, they always
Mhm.
start off with just sit down and write whatever comes to your mind. And it's such a great way just to get out anything without being judgmental or
Mhm.
thinking about what you're going to say. And I think it's important to take that approach to making art too, is just do something, just experiment, just get into the act of creating somehow, and then it's amazing what flows out. I honestly think some of the best art pieces I've made is when I wasn't trying to make something, but I was
Mhm.
just letting it flow. And then afterwards, like, oh, wow, I was shocked at what came out. So,
Mhm.
and even if it's not something that's beautiful or that you love, it's still just the process of being in the flow, in the creative mind, in the creative state is so beneficial. I mean, there's so much out there, so much data that proves the different chemicals and endorphins that get released when we create or when we're in the
Mm.
flow, and how good it is for our body and our minds, our brains, and how important it is for us to experience those states of being.
One of the things I love about art and helping people with art, with just the little art projects that I do. My mother-in-law is 93, and so she's at that age where, she's still pretty with it, but her memory's kind of failing and her motor skills aren't so good. So in a way, it's like working with a 3-year-old, and thinking, well, what can they do? What can they do? And there's always something that anyone can do, whether you have a student with an emotional disability or a physical disability or an elderly person or a very young child. There's always something that they can engage in. And with my mother-in-law, we found these scratch off books and she loves them. She's just going through them and we're going to make Valentine's Day cards with them. And it takes, a little facilitating. I'm going to cut out the heart shapes, but she's done all the scratching off. And then when you make something, you have something to give to people. And this is something that I have a really deep connection with because, as you know, I had a brain injury in 2018 and really couldn't do anything for about a year. And part of the horribleness of that is I just felt useless. Like I'm used to being able to contribute and teach and be a mom and a wife and all that. And I really couldn't do anything. And so making very simple art projects, whether it was cards or soup, or I folded a bunch of these little origami boxes and put kumquats in them. I had something to give to people because it felt horrible to just be only on the receiving end of relationships and to not have anything to give. And I feel like one of the things school art classes do with children, you help facilitate them making a Thanksgiving Day decoration or Valentine's Day decorations or a Mother's Day project or card so that these little kids have something, that they can give to their mom or their family and contribute in that way. And, when parents are busy, they're not necessarily going to do that, but so having a teacher facilitate that, I mean, every mom who gets, whatever the Mother's Day gift is gonna love and appreciate that and keep that gift.
Yeah, that's a
So I
really
really
good point.
appreciate art teachers for that kind of social integration into the fabric of our society by giving everyone an opportunity to contribute.
That's a really good point. And there is so much that students can make just from what they have, the materials that they have with them, whether it's paper or found objects, and then being able to create, like we did just do the little origami boxes, like I remember you made, and we are doing a lot of origami right now, but they love being able to take envelopes that they've made or boxes and use those for gifts. So they
Mhm.
don't need to go buy something, or lately, we're talking a lot about taking old clothes and using those to create purses or
Oh, cool.
sewing pillows instead of throwing away their old clothes or donating them, which is also helpful. But
Mhm.
using their own materials, things that they would throw away to make art, and that's a great way to empower students
Mhm.
to create things that, like you said, that they can give.
Yeah, and it just makes life more fun too, to have your creativity part of your daily experience and participating in that way. Well, so Shannon, anything else you want to share before we wrap this up?
I would say, um, to anybody out there who is listening, to always remember the importance of art education in our schools. And if you ever have a chance to support art or put in a plug for art education, especially for our younger students, our elementary school students, then please support arts in our schools. And it's so important. It's so important. So yeah, I guess that's what I would like to end with.
Okay, we're gonna call this art is essential. It's not an extra.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tahara. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, take care.
You too.